Page 15, Review of Endings, also known as Tags, from Volume 1. Number 1, Basic Shave and a Haircut. That just takes up the first two measures of the top line of tab. I'll give you a count. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, I'll describe a few possible trouble spots within this ending. The slide, you should know by now, on the third string. And then here, when you play the two third strings open, the first one will be played with the thumb, and the next one will be played with your index finger. Then you come down to the fourth string second fret, picked with thumb, and then fourth string open, also picked with thumb. Reason being that it's easy to do thumb there is that there are pauses in between those two notes. Whereas on the third strings open, since there are no pauses, it is smoother operation to go from thumb to index on the same string. A little tricky at this stage of the game, probably. Another thing I should point out, whereas I usually say an X is an eighth note pause but not a stop, and an R is a quarter note pause but not a stopping of the note. In this case, I do stop the last note of the first measure, the fourth string open. I just kind of rest my hand over the neck of the banjo to get that sense of space between the last note of the first measure. Let me say that again. The last note of the first measure and the final two pinches, which are third string, second fret, open first string, same two strings, both open. So with all that description there, I'll play it once more, a little more up the tempo. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's number 1. Number 2 is basically the same thing with some added pinches on the first string. So I'll play that through for you kind of slow. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So notice I still use, after the slide, which is a slide now with a pinch, I still use the thumb to pick the first open string pinch and then index middle to do the next open string pinch, because I'm reaching for the fourth string second fret with my thumb very next. And then the same thing, thumb on the open string, I chop it off, and then the final two pinches. Here's the whole thing again, a little more up tempo. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. And if you can't get all that fancy extra pinches in, number 1 is fine to use for now. But we'll now go on to double endings. That means rather than a 2-measure ending, it's a 4-measure ending. 4-measure endings are usually reserved for the end of instrumentals. So here's number 3. It was used in O Susanna in Book 1. And even though O Susanna is a song, it was played as an instrumental. So I used this 4-measure tag for the end of O Susanna. First I'll do it slowly, and then maybe I'll talk through some of the busy spots. 1, 2, 3, and 4 and. So the only part of number 3 that's new are the first two measures. And I like to set up the second string 5th fret in advance since I have it coming up shortly into the ending. So we start with 2 open strings, 5th string. There's that second string 5th fret. You're going to have to lift that up. I'm in the second measure now. I get the 3rd string 2nd fret with my middle finger of the fretting hand. Pinky grabs the 4th string 4th fret and followed by an open string pinch. And the second half is very similar to number 1 and number 2. So here's the whole thing at a quicker tempo. Number 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 4. I used this in Red River Valley in Volume 1, but there are plenty of songs in the key of G that this would make a nice tag for. Another 4-measure tag. Just using your G, C, and D7 chords. All forward, backward rolls until the final measure. So I'll just run through it and hope for the best that you can get it. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and. And then for the sake of variety, here's 2 more. Number 5. Number 5 involves a 16th note, or a pair of 16th notes, in measure 1. So that would be counted 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So here's all of number 5. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. I should have pointed out these 3-string pinches. I pointed them out before, and they are found in Volume 1, where you're doing your usual pinch on the outside strings with your thumb and middle finger, and the index finger comes into play on the 3rd string to get all 3 strings simultaneously. So here's number 5 at a quicker tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 6 is a good one for a little bit of D chord practice as opposed to D7. The D chord occurs in the 3rd measure. You can approach that 3rd measure in one of 2 ways. You can start it, of course, the 4th string open, add your index finger, but hold it down for a ringing effect. Add your middle finger, hold that down, add your pinky, and then by the time you get to the final measure, you're off the D chord. So just so you can hear that D chord, let me just play the third measure into the final measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the second way to land your D chord is to try to get all three fingers down at once. If you can hear that, I'm hammering my 3 D chord fingers, my index, middle, and pinky, on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th frets, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st strings, respectively. So that's good training for your 3 fingers of the D chord. Enough said, I guess. But for now, if you can get it by adding 1 finger at a time, you're also starting that training process.